Thank you all for being in the sweatbox with us.
You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I am not the moderator, that is her. Hi, my name's Blake. I am a digital artist, 3D artist. If you're super technical, I'd be a generalist. I'm mostly hired as a generalist, not for really my technical prowess, but more so an aesthetic that I've developed over the years. I do a mix of personal studies, which I've had the honor to do one with Artechouse, as well as commercial work, probably bigger projects being Lil Nas X and aespa in the music world. I've done work with Porsche and Genesis in the automotive industry, Facebook and Google for tech. I dabble in it all. So yeah, without further ado, the other one.
Hi, my name is Riki, and I'm the executive creative director at Artechouse, and I work with Blake and Annabelle, who just left for the next. Oh no, sorry, he didn't leave. He's right there. He's just shy. At our currently running project at New York City location called SUBMERGE project, where we also work with the Render Network with some of the artists they support to bring some of the emerging artists and some of the people who've never done large scale work in physical spaces. And we're sharing 17 artists in our immersion gallery format, and then NYU students work on our auxiliary gallery in the mezzanine space until end of this month. So we're going to be speaking about canvases beyond screens and large format platforms such as how Sphere and TeamLab and Artechouse are changing the space of content creation and how a render network or technologies like render network impact and empower such creative platforms. Yeah.
Yeah, perfectly said.
I'm going to be looking at my note. So I think I thought, so Annabelle it has worked on one of these contents at Artechouse, and he'll be speaking at the next one. I believe you are going to be talking about the work that you did at Sphere. Yeah. So some of the things that he'll be talking about is going to be overlapping, hence he's not on the stage with us. But the two topics that I think we want to talk about is the evolving canvases, and maybe we should talk how the render revolution
Yeah.
and evolving canvases sort of collide. And the discussion point being how large-scale physical platforms are reshaping how the audience perceptions and expectations of digital media and how that is evolving, and how the render revolution, especially in the last 5 years, is allowing that to happen and reshaping that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've been doing 3D for about 10 years now. So I am in the, when I started out, I was a little CPU, you press render, and then you pray that your computer doesn't crash for 36 hours because global illumination was evil. And now it's quite literally the silly little, this project's done, you press a button, you ship it, you get it done, and it's very cost effective. And it's kind of like, do I want to do it in-house for a higher electricity bill, or do I ship it out? And it's the same thing, which is awesome. But for limitations, and especially for the experiential, such as Artechouse, I don't know the exact pixels, but we were working at like 15,000 by 7,000 something.
New York is around 17K wall space, 17K by almost 3K, and the floor is about 8K by 7K-ish, 4K-ish. It's two plates. It's pretty big, yeah.
AKA it makes computers scream. And so with that, we only were able to do it through the render technology, because quite literally a frame for me, even doing half res and using something like Topaz Labs to be able to upscale to double, because in the nicest way, if you're rendering by 7,000, you're not going to notice an upscale with AI tech to be 15K or 17K. But with that, we were only able to do that literally because of current technology. Like if we had to ship something like this, you kind of gave the 5 years ago example, I would say even like 3 years ago, this would be completely just not possible. The money would be insane. It'd be like a Hollywood budget. And nowadays, it's so much more streamlined and effective. And also being able to all work remote, Otoy's scattered throughout with their team. I'm in LA, she's in New York City, and we were all able to tangibly work together to create these very seamless experiences. And I remember you were very patient because I kept sending you probably 20 files to get the perspective of floor to wall correctly. But being able to have that seamless kind of synergy across teams was really fantastic. But yeah, I feel quite literally it is just being able to have this tech that continues to be more efficient and speedier. And in the nicest way, I use the most selfish materials that are never friendly for optimizing on a render time. And so it's a privilege to be able to actually ship it. And you see people posting their stories and you're like, this is so holistic. It's not scroll, scroll, tap, tap, swipe away. This artwork's dead to the world. It's actually kind of helping create more of a core memory experience because you can actually be there and have like touch and sound and feel like fully immersed in a much more effective and meaningful manner.
Yeah, and I think we're in a moment where the definition of a canvas is shifting. I know a lot of the presentation we're seeing is about shipping things on a screen, but in my line of work, a lot of the content is large scale and it's bespoke screens and shapes. And if the most famous example being Refik and all of his architectural work that he does in the Gary and in Barcelona and all of that, and the Sphere being one of them. Team Lab is an example, and Artechouse is another example, and we all work in a very different spheres and different media curation world. In terms of content, the reason why something like Render Network is a very important in terms of curation and what gets shipped out and what people and it just quite frankly what public sees in terms of good digital artwork is up until recently most things you see out there in terms of these large scale canvases are real time stuff that you can make in a particle systems in a Houdini, something that is render efficient or cheap to create just because people don't have time or the budget to render anything beyond those systems. And as somebody, I come from a CGI background. I did visual development for animation and VFX as 18, 19, 20-year-old, 25, 21 years ago. So to me, that was not what good digital media or digital content was. So to being able to work with Render Network and their artists and be able to for them to like come on a media plane like Artechouse and beyond, and I think is an exciting place. There's still a lot of ways to go since like I remember David R.U. Had issues with being able to render beyond certain resolution on Render Network, and I know they were working on that. And Artechouse actually runs our own render farm to be able to work on our content and then our brand activations for some of the corporate events we do. And we had to like support like Annibale's last comp. We did an on render farm. So these capabilities help us push these contents out to bespoke, like contents that we work. And all of our locations have different canvases. And that's the same thing for any of these platforms like Sphere and Team Lab. But I mean, let's talk about the creation and platform influence. And I think I'm kind of touching on that in that there is the creation and commission practice across various large-scale digital media platforms and how their effects on artistic expression and audience engagement, right? Like there's a very, very distinct style on each of these that we're saying. Like we talked about the mass market appeal. You called it vanilla.
Yeah, you see cliches exist for a reason, stereotypes exist for a reason. A lot of times if you're talking to a stranger and you just use the word digital art, most people that are not familiar with it, they'll blink and they'll be like Beeple or something like something very close, familiar, Instagram famous, if you will. And with these experiential ones, what I really like is it widens the net because not every curation should be the same. Like you're not going to sell tickets as a business, and also people are going to be bored. They're going to go to a gallery once or an experiential space once and then be like, check, like amazing, no need to repeat. And like one example that comes to mind is I've been fortunate to be able to go to Team Labs both in Osaka and Tokyo, and had 2 different trips out, so I've gone to Team Labs twice, and the second time it kind of lost the wow factor for me because their curation is consistent, and it's not really an experience that they expect multiple people to go multiple times. And now I think they've expanded, so I can eat my words. But at the time, that was like a thing where I was like, wow, and folks I was with who are not the museum goers, to be politely, just haven't their food. They were actually really inspired and actually got more curious about learning about digital art and finding related artists, which is, kind of marketing our field and widening that net. And with something such as having the curation be more than just, as we'll call it, vanilla, or what your stereotype is when you blink and think of the first image that comes to your mind, the accessibility of being able to render these larger scale things and it no longer being behind a paywall or a senior person who has their own server in the back house or this or that. It opens it up to younger talent or more junior talent. It opens it up to the late bloomers and the freaky styles, the folks that are like, I'm not really marketable because I do some weird niche thing. And it's like, maybe you are in the context of this curation. What I really liked about Submerge was that everyone's artwork was extremely different. Like, there was very few overlaps where I was like, oh, is that the same artist? It was like, nope, this is clearly a different person. This is clearly a different person. And that makes it super exciting. And then even seeing folks, because we live in a phygital world, everything eventually gets captured back on your camera and shared. It was awesome to see folks that would tag and be like, my favorite's this guy's or this girl's or this bay's. And it's like, yeah, these people are getting kind of art educated through widening, again, the net and also the trust. Because it is finding that balance between marketability, but also allowing yourself to evolve and go future forward and not just be like, this is the aesthetic of today, and so it will be the aesthetic of forever. So that's kind of my long rant about that.
No, and I think we also talked about the high budget spectacle like Sphere, and that has its kind of place, right? Like, because each artist will bring their own style, and that will push certain style and spectacle to the mass market. And then there's the Artechouse can be a little bit more bespoke, artist driven. Experiences, although Artechouse will also do more commercial driven styles as well as needed, but something like Submerge is closer to the mission where Artechouse was started, because it wanted to push people, to give people taste of discover and develop taste where people in movie industry, you like thrill, you like horror, you like comedy. In digital art, experiential art especially, people don't have, they don't know like, oh, I like horror, I'm gonna go see that today at Sphere. Like, no, people don't say that. So I think we're still in a nascent place, and we're not really putting out enough content in terms of style and aesthetic variety, and that's probably because of the resource, right? Like, rendering is expensive, making content is very expensive, and I fight that every single day in my work as well. Commissioning work is expensive. Annabelle's work is 1 minute long in our location, and that took a lot of effort, I'm sure. And yeah, I have a 30-second work in Artechouse right now, and that took a lot of effort. But good work is expensive, so and that's still a barrier even with a render network. So it will be interesting to see how that kind of proceeds in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And that kind of gets us to accessibility and democratization through technology.
Yeah.
And we like to highlight how technologies like render network democratize high quality rendering and broaden creative opportunities, which sort of Submerge was an example of. Enhance inclusivity, which we're kind of touching on in digital art, and enable presentation at large scale experiences like Artechouse and Sphere and beyond.
Yeah, and even outside of just even the examples that we keep listing, because those are kind of the ones where you say it and you know what it is. Everyone knows what the giant cursed orb in Vegas is.
Yeah.
And with that, it's but seeing that, like I actually had a moment when the sphere, because the sphere is what, like 2 years old now or
A
about.
little bit over, yeah.
Yeah, so last year, halfway through the year, I got to work with the Venetian Casino in Vegas, and they decided to install a wraparound screen, and it was actually inspired by seeing how the Sphere had really cool art on it. And they were like, we want to hire digital artists now to basically create this like fantastical like escape on our wraparound screen that's strip facing, and that is more of like kind of I guess a 3D-esque billboard thing. But there's also the famous one with the cat, I think also in Japan, etc., where the more people see these larger than life experiences and see that people are stopping, and it's no longer a camera or a thumb stopper on your phone. It's like, oh no, like this is kind of marketing. Like people want to take a photo of the Venetian, people want to take a photo of the Sphere. Then it's like, oh, this has a commercial value to it. And it just widens the kind of net we need as artists to be able to have those opportunities to create these experiences and these spectacles. So I think it just in general kind of feeds in on a kind of fiscal economic level, because in my opinion, no starving artist is a happy or successful artist. You actually do need to have that balance. And also the opportunities, which seem to be expanding pretty rapidly because of these larger than life experiences, and showing that they are success as a proof of concept, but actually executed level.
Yeah. I will say one thing is that making content for these physical spaces and like physical platform is different from making content for screen. And that is one thing. I do work with a lot of agencies and brands. And like even really well-known agencies, they bring their content. Like they're, even if it looks really good on your 4K screen, 8K screen, sometimes it just feels flat in a large scale platforms. And that is because there's physical, like it's more like lighting design a lot of times. So you have to know where the light distribution works like in a space. There's ambient light. Shapes work differently. There's scale. You have to understand architecture. You have to understand physics, how light works. And the content making for space is different. So in order for someone to be very successful in content like designer and maker in a physical platform, you do need to be able to experiment, but it's expensive to do so, and there's not a lot of like playground to do so. And it'll be interesting to kind of see where and how such quote unquote schools or opportunities will exist in the future, because I don't think the future of content will be in your phone, or that's where your shared experiences will be in the future. You know, I mean, look at Sphere or Cosm and all of these other experiences that are popping up. And with some technologies like render network changing and expanding, and platforms like us, like Artechouse and others, continuing to experiment with it, will be interesting to see where it goes. We still cannot render iridescent content at the scale that we work at, and people keep showing you Instagram photos and be like, we would like to have this on our event. I'm like, no.
We will die of old age.
Like,
yeah.
Unless you have 5 years to your event, like that is not possible. But like, hey, I don't know, like maybe in 3 weeks it'll improve and AI will be able to do it. Who knows? But like that's still the reality. So we work with a lot of realities that is not. There's a lot of restraint. Like there's a lot of restraint that 4K, 8K screens don't at the moment.
Yeah, and to add on to your moment about the iridescence, that is one thing, because people often ask me, because I use Octane and Redshift, I'm familiar with cycles, so I'm pretty fluid for the main GPU renderings. And I always get asked constantly, like, when are you going to learn Unreal? When are you doing real time? And I was like, do you see these caustics? Do you see these iridescents? They are not in your video games unless they're baked in. And they are definitely not practical for real time rendering at this point. And I'm excited for the day where I'm proven very wrong. But it has yet to come. So, like she said, maybe in 3 weeks we'll get that next upgrade.
I mean, in general, I think we're we're excited to build like a richer ecosystem where all of these playgrounds, it will become a playground, and it will be democratized and it will be easier access to be able to experiment in such large scale and physical platforms, and richer content, and not just this same sort of software developer created content, but really content that's made by content creators and designers. Just to add to that, we Render Network and Artechouse is still working on throughout the year to give grants to artists and designers to submit to our program at New York for select artists. And I believe there will be a call out that will be going out via Render Network or the right channels.
Well said. Yeah. So apply, because it's really cool.
I think that gives us a right. Yeah.
Yeah.